Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome to a very, very special edition of King Size. This is our first edition of Kingsize Insights, where we meet and have a conversation, an in-depth conversation with an incredible author. And who better to kick things off? We have with us today for our first ever author interview, Violet Castro, who of course is the author of Queen of the Cicadas and many, many other wonderful works of art. It's a real joy to have you here. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone who's tuning in, readers, new readers, supporters of my work, horror fans. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Amazing. So listen, there's probably a lot of people watching who are really familiar and huge fans of you and your writing. But for those that might not be aware of you, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Violet Castro?
Um, so I'm a Mexican American woman from South Texas originally, and I've lived in the UK for 14 years now, 14 and a half years. And I'm pretty settled. I typically write horror, erotic horror, and science fiction, speculative fiction, the dark stuff.
Yeah.
I write the dark stuff. Sometimes sexy, a lot of mix of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am also a big advocate when it comes to diversity and including marginalized voices. Just because I figure, well, I feel that the more we know about each other, um, the more we can expand our consciousness and kind of be unified. And I think
Mm.
horror and, well, writing in general, books bring people together. They really can. They have that kind of power, where you can sit with someone and did you read that? Yeah, and it could,
Yeah.
you never know what it could spark, and also what the book itself sparks within you. Like, well, I didn't know that about that culture. And wow, I've never heard of that mythical creature before. But that's what's magical, I think, about books and
Mm.
storytelling in general. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's amazing. That's a brilliant nutshell. So, so storytelling, as you said, absolutely, it's a way that connects us as humans and as individuals, and allows us to learn so much more about each other, and the things that we might not be aware of. Have you always been into storytelling? And when did you realize that you had a story and a voice that you wanted to be heard?
Well, I've my mom sent me a bag full of stories that I wrote starting when I was like 6. I've always loved scary stories. I've always heard scary stories, urban legends. Um, and when you're a child, you just kind of do whatever without any inhibition. You don't really care. You don't stop to think, oh, is this good enough? Am I good enough? You just write your stories, you draw your pictures, and you're like, look at this, it's amazing. And of course, everybody's like, yes,
Yeah.
it is. But you're a kid. Obviously, that changes. So yeah, as I grew up, it's just kind of like my love for horror never waned. However, it grew, but it was just not something I really saw for myself or I pursued until my late 30s, and I really
Yeah.
felt a longing in my heart and my soul. There was something, a big void in my
Mhm.
life, and I was really in a dark place, and I just started writing, and I haven't stopped. It's just
Wow.
has taken on this trajectory where it was like, I need something, and
Yeah.
I did it. I just
Yeah.
put my mind to it. I felt it, and I did it. So yeah, I've always kind of had that. But again, like as you grow up,
Mm.
you just kind of, your confidence goes down in many ways.
Yeah.
And you're told how you should live, what you should do, what you
Mm.
should study. And
Mm.
um, it was nice to rediscover this part of myself because it's brought me so much personal happiness and success. So
Yeah. And I guess to to be in a dark place and to have that that anxieties, that lack of confidence that we have as we get older, it must have been such a big leap of faith, to be able to put pen to paper and start that creative process. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, I really felt like I needed something in my life,
Mm.
and was really focusing on it, and I had this really crazy vivid dream.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that should be a story. And I have lots of crazy vivid dreams. Not all of them should be stories, but this one had a definite tale. There were
Mhm.
characters. It was something I knew I had to pursue. So as
Yeah.
soon as I woke up, I went and I opened my computer, and I just didn't know where it was going to go, what it could be, nothing. I just leap of faith, as you said.
Yeah.
And I just let it evolve, and it just snowballed. It just went and went, and that became Maria the Wanted. But then I
Yeah.
started writing short stories,
Mhm.
and then I started writing novellas, and then I
Mhm.
started submitting, and then it just happened
Mhm.
the way it was probably supposed to happen.
Yeah. So
And yeah.
that's amazing. So you've got this these stories that are now, you've made that commitment, and they're starting to flood out, and the short
Yeah,
stories,
yeah.
and you're starting to really get that your voice down, or kind of the stories to be told. But then there's quite a gap, isn't there, to be able to get the stories heard and get them out there and out there in the world. What was that like? How did you approach getting these stories, these dreams that you'd captured, into story form? How did you get them out there into the world?
Well, first you've got to write them, and then you have to
Yeah,
edit them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then you have to have the ability to take a lot of
yeah.
rejection, and not take it personally, but to take it on on the chin,
Mm,
revisit whatever you wrote and was rejected. Goddess of Filth, which is a novella,
mm,
was a rejected short story, and I was gutted. I really, really wanted this
yeah.
story in this anthology, but it was meant for something better and bigger,
Mm,
and it's become, a starred reviewed novella. It was in a Nightworms package. So you
yeah.
really don't know what can happen if you persist. If you not only persist, but also have enough inside to say, I'm going to read this short story and see what I can do with it. Maybe it isn't all that.
Yeah.
Maybe there are other things I can do with it. And I did. I was
Mm,
really upset, and I said, all right, well, let me work with this. And it became a novella. And,
wow.
it is what it is now, which I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that I persisted. But again, getting it out there, it's persistence, it's dedication, and
Yeah.
it's being able to take rejection.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's that rejection is such a moment where it either, can, I guess, can bury you, stop so much growth happening, or as you
Yeah.
said, you were upset, but you realized there was something there, and you then created something with it. But I know Stephen King talks about, he had a nail that he had, in where he was staying, and he would put all the rejection slips that he got there, and it got to the point that that nail was filled with rejection slips. And he said, so what are you going to do at that point? And he went out and he got a bigger nail.
Yeah. Pretty
And
much.
but it's a real testament, isn't it, to resilience and your character, that you're able to overcome that rejection that for so many people at that first step stops them moving forward with their voices. I mean, that must have been a real turning point for you.
Yeah, you just get used to it. And
Yeah.
it's really hard living in the UK, because I would wake up to rejections. Like, that is my
Yeah.
coffee reading.
Good
That's what I
good
read with my
morning.
coffee. Good morning.
Yeah.
This your story was not good enough. Enjoy your
Yeah,
coffee.
yeah.
Like,
You have a
because, you
great
know,
day. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And
brilliant.
then my kids screaming in the back to do the school run. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, can I get a little butter with that rejection? Literally, like, let me just spread some jam as much as possible.
Yeah, just
Um,
lay it on. Come on, what else? What else have you got? It's not even 7:30 and I've already dealt with
mhm.
this, right? I guess the only
Yeah,
way for the day is
exactly.
up, right?
Exactly. I would wake up to those rejections because of the time difference.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you just again, you you just go with it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop if I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your
I enjoy
calling,
it too
right?
much.
Yeah.
Not the rejection,
Yeah.
the writing,
The right, yeah, it's your calling. I mean,
the storytelling.
yeah, you mentioned obviously that you get your rejection letter first thing in the morning, or as that used to happen, and then you got the kids as well, because you know you've got
Yo, yeah.
kids, and you are juggling being a mum and having a forging a writing career, and
Mm-hmm.
I've got kids myself, and I know how tricky it is. I mean, first of all, what an amazing achievement that you've managed to forge so much
Thank
whilst
you.
spinning so many plates. Did you have to were there areas in your life that you had to compromise or maybe sacrifice in order to be able to forge this road ahead with everything you were dealing with?
Um, I think I sacrificed the parts of myself that needed to go, the
Yeah,
parts
okay.
that couldn't say no, the parts that were afraid, the parts that just wanted to sit back and be comfortable. So,
Yeah.
what I sacrificed is nothing compared to what I've gained. Not that it's not nothing, but
Wow.
what I have gained outweighs the sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I'd work during the day when the kids are at school, or I work in the evenings. And again, I'm in a very, very privileged position where I do not have a full-time job. So
Mhm.
I can dedicate myself to this, where there's a lot of writers that do work full-time and
Yeah.
they're trying to. So I have been extremely privileged
Mhm.
to be able to really push through with this. So when they are in school, I can work as if I'm doing a full day of work.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I've heard you say that you you write fast, you write quickly.
Yeah.
And I've never written a book or attempted to write a book. I'm just in absolute admiration of you and those that can.
Thank you.
But I write songs and I'm a songwriter, and I find that the songs and lyrics I've written since having the kids, I write really fast, partly out of necessity,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I've got a short window to do that before I need to do a bath time or a bedtime or a
Yeah,
school
yeah,
run.
yeah.
So that naturally writing fast and writing in that white heat, is that something that is you kind of, I guess, in your nature, or has it been through necessity?
I think it's more in my nature because
Yeah,
once I get an idea, I just
yeah,
have to go,
yeah,
go, 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 go. Or if I think of something or I say something, like the notes on my phone are full, like so much. There's so much there.
yeah,
And I just, even if I don't have this like huge idea, whatever I have on my computer that needs to be, chipped away at, I'll still kind of go and dedicate myself because I
yeah.
know it needs to be done. And sometimes, even if I don't feel like writing, I'll sit down and it'll just be like boom, it'll come out.
Wow.
So I try to just do when I can. If I
Yeah.
have a free moment, even if I'm not particularly in the mood or particularly inspired, sometimes
Mhm.
just rereading something will
Yeah.
ping something and I'll get to do it.
So you
It'll
don't have a set, say, today I'm going to write 500 words, 1,000 words, couple of
nah.
A4 sheets. It's a more uh I guess flexible in the moment approach, am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because also, there's also so much pressure already on writing. Don't pressure
Yeah.
yourself unless you have an absolute deadline.
Yeah.
like, oh, I need this in by blah blah blah. Don't pressure yourself, because then you're gonna, yeah. I think being flexible in that way
Yeah.
really helps the creativity, unless you have a deadline you have to meet,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
sometimes you do, and you're like, okay, I've got to hit
Okay. Yeah.
this.
I've got to get this off at this time and meet this. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I guess, Stephen King writes about quite a few of those moments where his characters look at the page and they talk about falling through the page. The white spaces become bigger and bigger. Paul Sheldon in Misery, the writer. So many of Stephen King's characters are writers. And he talks about, the writer's blocks, all those days when the words aren't coming. And you've alluded that there are sometimes naturally those days where maybe it's harder to write.
Yeah.
What is it that gets you out of that little momentary slump or slump that you might be in?
Sometimes starting a new project.
Yeah.
So if I feel like I've stumped on one short story or novel or novella, I'll let it just like sit, or I go to the gym. I exercise really
Yeah.
gets me going. And also like being in nature. So I love the
Okay.
ocean. I love
Yeah.
mountains. I love forest greenery. That always just revives me and
Hmm.
rejuvenates me. So there are a few things, but sometimes you just need a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need a mental break.
Yeah. Yeah. And you go and get that kind of recharging from around you or from that
Yeah,
physical
music. I
exercise
listen to
music.
music.
Yeah, well, I know that I think we share probably quite a few similar music tastes from
Hmm.
seeing some of your t-shirts and the posts on Instagram.
Yeah.
What music is it for you that you love and that really gets you going?
Oh gosh, well, I love like rock and metal,
Yeah.
and so a lot of I have quite a few books that have like soundtracks and have music.
Hmm.
So Maria the Wanted has a huge soundtrack and like lots of music. Um, it just depends on my mood, really. So I can go from listening to, you know, um, Iron Maiden
Yeah,
to
nice.
listening and to listening to Simply Red
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
to classical, if I'm just like writing something. So I just
Yeah.
sold to Del Rey The Generational Curse of La Llorona. And for
Yes,
that,
congratulations
thank
on
you.
that.
Thank you.
Really exciting, really
Thank
exciting.
you. So for that, I listened to a lot of classical and a lot
Mhm.
of Beethoven, because it was very
Mhm.
heavy and emotional, and just I wanted that feeling of drowning. And I
Wow.
think Beethoven's music, a lot of it gives you those just overwhelming emotions. I love
Yes.
Beethoven, but yeah, I mean, there's just so much that I listen to. I have a very, very taste.
Yeah, really, really eclectic.
I just love music in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Spanish guitar, I mean, all of it. I listen to a
Yeah.
lot of Latin dance music just because it's fun.
Yes. Well, there's a rhythm to, how you write, kind of just, what I noticed in Queen is that there's a rhythmic feel to it. There's a pulse, a rhythm. There's a musicality to your prose that I think, it really shines through.
Oh, thank
No,
you.
which is just a joy to read. So tell us
Thank you.
about the next project. Let's look ahead for a moment, and then we'll just take it back. So the
Okay.
generational curse.
Yes.
Tell us
Of
about that. Of
ooh,
how am I
La
pronouncing that?
Llorona.
La
La
Llorona.
Yes, perfect.
The generational
La
curse of
curse
La
of Llorona.
Llorona. Okay, how
That's
did I,
right.
how did I do? It needs a bit of work.
Perfect.
Needs a bit of work, right?
You got the R's. That's all right.
That's it.
La Llorona.
La Llorona. So tell
There you go.
us about La Llorona.
Well, basically, she's a woman who drowned her children and killed herself
Wow. So
in
not
in
glad. So
folklore.
no Mick. Maybe she was listening to Mick Hucknall. That was it. 'Cause that could push her over the edge. So
So so she that's the folklore. That's the folk
yeah.
tale, right?
Yep.
But I'm always like, well, these stories about women, there's so many stories that are told about women. Look at the stories told about Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
You know, she was a whore. Well, she? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Um, there's so many, and I this is a story you're told as a kid. If you don't behave, if you don't go to bed, you're good. La Llorona is coming to get you. She
Right.
hears babies crying, children crying because she killed her children, and she's going to take you to a place.
Right.
You're
Wow.
told this.
You're told yes.
Parenting back in the day.
You
Great.
know what? I'm tempted, as you said, to use that on my youngest, where he will
I
not
know.
go to bed. So then,
Yeah. Believe me, it's traumatizing. You don't want to
yeah.
do that. They might be a writer. They might be grow up to be a writer. No, so that's the story you're told as a kid.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what is the real story? What is the
Yeah.
backstory? How did this come to be? But I also wanted to couple this with um, postnatal depression,
Okay.
because we don't always talk about um, how difficult marriage, pregnancy, and having children is. We don't talk about the strain those things put on
Yeah.
someone who's already struggling emotionally, mentally.
Yeah.
So you have Alejandra, who is really struggling in her marriage and with her being a mother of three children. And she just cannot cope. And what she doesn't know is that what's happening to her isn't just internal. There is a generational curse. That La Llorona is more than just an apparition. And so she has to come to terms with what's happening with inside of her, but also her family history, going all the way back to the conquest, when
Yeah.
this curse first started. So you find out the truth of La Llorona. It's more than a ghost. It's even worse. So, she needs to figure this out before it claims her and her children, because it's an all-consuming evil entity.
And did you know that this was a folk tale that you wanted to be able to bring to life, and also bring those themes that sometimes are taboo and, as you said, are not talked about? Did you know that this would make a really good coupling to be able to tell these stories?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because for me, what that breaking point, what is the breaking point for someone
Yeah.
to take their life and take their children's life?
Yeah.
And what is the real story behind that?
Mm.
I think there's a lot of things, in life. We tend to create monsters and villains,
Yeah.
but they're often monsters and villains behind the monster and villain.
Yes. Yeah,
Things that are more
absolutely.
insidious. Things are more insidious.
Yeah.
And we don't like to talk about mental health. We'd rather
Yeah.
just stigmatize
Yeah.
people with you know um that struggle with their mental health, stigmatize
Yeah.
women who refuse to toe the line,
Mm.
or to say no,
Mm.
or to want more from themselves, or break from
Mm.
generational curses themselves.
So that darkness that you're addressing there, obviously with that theme, how does that, going really deep with that, telling this story, writing this important story, how how easy is it for you to just be able to, say, switch that off at the end of the day? From a, I know for me, from an acting point of view, in my past, if I played roles that were very, very dark, that you have to switch it off because you can't take it with you. But there's almost like an echo or a remnant sometimes that carries with you through immersing yourself in that darkness. How do you balance that light and shade?
I actually feel lighter and better
Right.
after I've written it,
Get it. I get it. Totally. Yeah.
because it pulls so much out of me and pulls so much from me. It almost helps me understand more about myself. And it just feels like a deep breath, or a deep breath, and just exhaling it all onto the
Mm.
page.
Wow. So there's almost a catharsis that happens with it.
Absolutely.
Amazing that I can very much imagine then, and that catharsis that you feel would then absolutely be transposed to a catharsis that someone would read who's gone through those experiences, those traumas, and those darknesses themselves, to have that represented, that must feel incredibly healing for somebody to read that as well. And
Well, yeah, I mean, I tried to
um,
do that with Cicadas, because in the Queen of the Cicadas, I mean, it covers some heavy
oh
material. It
yeah.
covers some heavy history, but it's the kind of history that, sorry, that has to be, I think, talked about,
Yeah.
really discussed.
Yeah.
And, you know, racism isn't going anywhere.
Mm,
Racism is alive and well, as much as we want to say it's not.
yeah.
And, and also uh, violence against women,
Yeah. Yeah.
which which also needs to be addressed. So even
Mm,
though they're heavy themes, there are themes that do need to
mm,
be explored,
yeah.
and explored by the people who've experienced that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So those two themes there, obviously, of racism and the violence against women. That I mean, absolutely. We're what, 2021, and it's still so prevalent. I mean, looking just recently, on a different area, but on the Euro 2020, and the racism that happened,
It
that
was
was, I mean, it's unbelievable, right?
it
Kind of,
was I couldn't
yeah,
believe
that it still exists now. And that, for instance, especially the English football team, when three black players missed the penalty, and they knew, and they said they all knew, the very next day there would be an onslaught, an outpouring of hatred, and also reading stats that actually, it was something crazy, like if England win a match, then if England lose a match, domestic violence goes up by, I think the figure was in the 30% range, and if they lose, it goes up by, in the 20% rate. Sorry, if they win, it goes up in the 20%. But either way, you're going, so hang on, this is still, how, this is still so prevalent. And for you, you're writing and you're shedding light on areas that some people might find it more comfortable to shy away from or hide away from. I'm just so curious, for you, is that a real calling? And does it ever feel like it's I guess a burden, or is it a blessing to be able to shine that light on these areas that need exposure?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful I get to do what I do. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that I can filter these things and put them on the page and put them in a story.
Yeah.
um, it is a privilege. Again, like I said before, it is a real
Mm,
privilege, and I'm really grateful that I can do it, because, again, if we don't talk about these things, they're just going to
yeah.
continue. It'll be a
Yeah.
cycle. It'll just be kind of like a,
Yeah.
a curse that just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Um, and we need to get off some of these hamster wheels. And the only way to do it is to say stop, and
Yeah.
to shed light, and to say this is not okay. Or um, for, I think, especially people to not feel they are alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For people to feel that it's okay to talk about whatever's happening with them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the racism, like we saw with the with a football match, you're
Yeah.
just like, got
Yeah.
to be kidding. But the fact that the players were then able to could speak up against it
Yeah.
and be vocal, and instead of just feel like, oh, if I speak out, my career is going to suffer, or no
Yeah.
one will let me play. Whereas a few years back, maybe that would be the case.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
fact that they could speak out,
Mm.
to me, means that's a good change, that they can, and not be feel any retribution for doing so.
Yeah. And what, the fact that it's still so prevalent, that racism, though, there's attitudes that exist. um we see, as a result of, the Black Lives Matter movement, this anger and vitriol by certain groups, and then having, well, White Lives Matter, which kind of missing the whole point of what this movement was about.
Yeah.
And a movement and a push for equality regardless of the color of your skin, for some people, is it antagonizes them. And how do we deal with that? How do you deal with that, as often, as being a voice for those that are voiceless, when you're often putting your voice out in a world that is filled with a lot of people that have a lot of hatred and a lot of racism and a lot of bigotry and a lot of sexism in their hearts? What's that like for you?
Yeah, so like in Queen of the Cicadas, in one of the chapters, I take the voice of the Aztec Queen of the Dead. And in the story, in the myth, she doesn't have any skin. She's a flayed woman. And I give her the voice, and she says, I am not burdened by skin. I cannot believe all of the problems that are caused by skin. So I don't understand it. And for me, storytelling, books, including writers from all different walks of life and groups, um, it's it gives us the opportunity to peel back our skin, to peel back all of the layers, peel back our gender, peel back all the masks we wear, so that we are just left with what is inside, what's beneath
Wow.
our
Wow.
bloody beating heart. And we all have bloody beating hearts. That is what gives us life at the core, because we all live the same, we die the same, our hearts beat the same. At the core, we are the same. We are all
Yeah.
driven by the same life force, our hearts. So for me, um, you know, I forgot what I
I
the
was
story. Anyway, anyway, that's the whole thing about
Oh,
racism. Kind
yeah.
of.
I- it's so beautiful what you said.
Thank
I
you. Thank you.
just, honestly, I've rarely heard it articulated in such a clear and
Oh, thank you.
such a beautifully emotional way, and just such a honest way. It's the same light, as you say, it's that same life force that drives us. And I felt, when I read Cicadas, I felt so much anger and so much rage at what I saw on the page, what I saw in the story, what I saw happening. But before I dive into that, just if there's anyone listening that yet hasn't read this incredible book, Queen of the Cicadas,
Thank you.
please do yourself a favor, get
Thank you.
yourself a copy. It is
Thank you.
absolutely phenomenal. Before we dive into the themes a little bit more, just can you give us an overview of what this incredible story addresses? Just give
Um,
us a sense.
yeah. Basically, there is a farmhouse in Texas, and it is now, in modern times, converted B&B. There is a wedding, and Belinda, the main character, is going to a wedding, and when she was a kid, she heard this urban legend about La Reina de las Chicharas, the queen of the cicadas. And she was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Well,
Yeah,
it turns out she's at the place where this urban legend all started. And the urban legend started with Milagros is a farm worker who was at the farm, um, and she was brutally murdered. And it was just ignored by the town. And then she's become this urban legend. Like, if you call her, she'll come and get you.
yeah,
typical urban legend, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
You just want it to be like, okay, yeah, I see where this is going. But what you
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
is that Belinda, Milagros, and the Aztec Queen of the Dead, all of their fates are intertwined
yeah.
um, to create this almost new beginning for all of them.
Mhm. The Milagros character, so so beautifully written, and there were some moments that I wrote down, because there's so many of the references there to the injustice and inequalities and the racism that pepper the book. So you talk about the degree on white paper versus the
Yeah.
notions of brown skin. We were too young for the burden of our skin to take root yet. And as you said, those references to that burden of the skin, and then that peeling back that then frees that weight, that burden. I thought it was such a tactile, powerful way to describe that inequality, that racism. Um, how was it, as a voice for so many female Latinx writers that have maybe not been given um, that opportunity, that moment, that platform? How how easy or difficult was that? Or how was it to write those passages about Milagros,
It,
especially, you know,
it just flowed. It just
yeah,
flowed. Sometimes those kind of, it just flowed. It just was like
beautiful.
boom, boom, boom. I just felt it. I
Yeah.
just felt it. Actually, it was originally going to be a novella, and it was
Yeah.
across the board rejected. And then
Idiots, fools,
and then
fools,
I
right?
and then I made it into a novel so I could try to get an agent, and I still
Yeah.
couldn't get an agent. I It just wasn't, nobody would bite, either publishers, agents, nobody. And then finally
Yeah.
Flame Tree picked it up,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh my god, because I was feeling like just really bad
I
about
bet.
it, really bad. I was
I
like,
bet.
it was just it hurt, it hurt a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
um but then it got picked up, and it's received four-starred reviews, and it's people are really liking it. So I'm like, wow, I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that it's come out. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I
so,
think we're so grateful that you wrote it. I mean,
oh, thank you.
to see those so many pictures of it in the bookstores, globally, to
I
see.
am just like,
I mean,
ah,
right? How does that? That must feel good, right?
that feels amazing. But I need to go see if it's in Waterstones. I don't know if
Right.
it's here. I'm like,
Okay.
I need to go to a Waterstones.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm gonna, yeah, when I head to my local Waterstones, I'm gonna
I'm
have a
gonna
look.
have
And
a
if it's
look.
not, I'm gonna say, right, listen, you need to, this needs to be stocked, okay? Because it's amazing. You see so many people, so many of our amazing community of book lovers and horror lovers, and on Instagram, so many of them.
Yeah.
Cicadas has just connected so deeply
I am just
with
like, and
them.
on Twitter, I'm so grateful. Like, so I'm
Yeah,
only on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not
yeah,
on any other socials. And I honestly, I have to say, I am so grateful for everybody who shares it, because that always makes such a difference,
yeah, yeah.
Also, like, leave reviews, guys, rating, even if it's like a 2-word review, or even if it's like an emoji thumbs up.
Yeah.
Just go on Amazon, Goodreads, and just be like, yeah, it's I. Just any little
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Get
Yeah,
involved.
good job.
Yeah,
So please,
yeah,
guys, reviews really matter, even if it's like a sentence. Okay.
yeah,
Or even a rating, just
yeah,
anything small.
absolutely. And how would if someone was new to you and listening tonight and was like, oh my God, yeah, yeah, yeah. How would someone find you on Instagram and Twitter?
Yeah, I have the same handle for both, at V Latina London, all one word, V Latina London. And it's the same for Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, just you can go on there, and I take lots of photos.
Yeah.
of myself,
Well,
of
listen,
my books,
why wouldn't you?
Of England,
Yeah.
of just all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I repost as much as I can
Yeah.
when people post my books.
Yeah.
Um,
And as
so
you can imagine, it's for those of you that haven't seen it yet, it's such a vibrant and really active account, of course, because it seems like, especially for you during this lockdown period, you have just your creativity and your output. I mean, wow, must have, it just seems like it's just pouring out of you.
yeah, I wrote a lot in lockdown.
Yeah.
In last year alone, I had 8 short stories published in various anthologies. This year, I've had to really cut back and say no to a lot of projects because
Yeah.
I've just had to focus on the big stuff. Um, and so, yeah, I have 2 more novels. Hopefully, Maria the Wanted. I'm trying to get that reissued,
Great.
and then also have a science fiction novel,
Oh, cool.
undocumented, that's looking for a home. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I want to find, because I know that you've written children's books, because obviously you're a mum, horror books because you're a horror fan, sci-fi coming up, erotic horror. For you, how easy do you find it to write across those different genres?
very
Yeah.
easy. It just again comes out. It comes out. It
Yeah.
just, when I feel it, I think it, I just do it. And
Yeah.
I try not to hesitate or think twice. If I do something, it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But I feel like if you don't give yourself that chance,
Yeah.
you'll never know. And
Yeah.
that's worse than not trying at all.
So have you've not yet come up with it to any resistance of people going, but hang on, you're an erotic horror writer, or you're a horror writer. This is what we want from you. This is the lane we want you to stay in. And if you were to come up against that, what how would you deal with that?
Don't tell me what to do. I'll write what I want, how I want, when I
Absolutely.
want. Like, who makes up these rules? Who
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah.
Who and why? By saying stay in your lane, only write this, only write that, only serves to make yourself small or someone who wants you to be small. Okay. Yes, it is a business. And yes, you have to think about that. And yes, there's all these da 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 da, but I don't care. I just don't. If I want to write something, I want to write it. If I feel it, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, man.
Um, and again, I'll cross the publishing bridge when I get there. But for me, yeah, I like to write what I want to write. So
Good. Good. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. That's so refreshing and so cool to hear. And so important, because again, it means for us we're going to get so many different styles of writing and
yeah,
stories from
thank
you.
you.
But just for a moment, just digging back into Cicadas, there's a real sense of rage there. I've spoke about that word as a reader, kind of what Milagros went through. I just felt the anger, the injustice. And you write this beautiful sentence about the rage was so great it felt like it possessed the power to swallow the sun. That's just fucking brilliant, right? Okay, for a start, because I'm sure it encapsulates what it feels like. I'm a privileged white middle class man, but I know what anger feels like and what rage feels like, and
Yeah.
it was a different context. But when I'm reading your story, you were able to capture emotions and then give it that vivid sense of what that might look and feel like. So much so when you read something, you go, yeah, that's exactly it. And that's quite something, Violet. That
Oh,
really is.
thank you so much. Thank you so
No.
much. Your words are just humbling. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it was a real joy, and another one I wrote down because it's just so beautiful. You spoke about the quiet woman with a great rage, on the verge of breaking loose to be something else. And if I can be so bold, I mean, is there any of you or people you've known, women you've known from maybe marginalized backgrounds that are encapsulated in that sentence?
Me.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
a lot of the women that, my mom My
Yeah.
mom went to law school in her 40s and she was a domestic worker. She used to clean houses and take me to clean houses. And now she's an attorney and she's a judge.
Wow.
So,
Brilliant.
she was homeless at one point when she was pregnant with me. There's a lot of like Latino writers out there that same thing, they've really overcome a lot. And so yeah, there's like this like breaking through, there's this transformation. And a lot of my stories are
Mm,
about that transformation,
yeah.
about being something and becoming something else. So like in Goddess of Filth, my novella,
Mm,
um, it's about possession,
yeah.
but it's a possession not like you imagine. Like, we always think of possession of the young girl in a white, dirty nightgown, tied to a bed, screaming. A lot of those horror films on Amazon, Netflix,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like, is
Yeah.
there a store where they all get these raggedy
Yeah.
ass nightgowns with the
Yeah. Yeah.
priest standing? The priest is the good guy, but I'm in
Yeah.
Goddess of Filth. What if the priest isn't the good guy?
Great. Great.
What if he's hiding something incredibly
Yeah.
demonic? And what if the thing possessing the girl is really her savior?
Yeah. Oh,
And for
beautiful twist.
so and again, like in Cicadas, it's another Aztec goddess I
Yeah.
utilize, a
Yeah.
real one. She's a
Yeah.
sin eater. So she inspires sin. This one's a lot saucier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just that, see, now it's brilliant. That leads beautifully to, because, I found, reading Cicadas, I mean, there's some real heat in that book. Okay. It's, for instance, King Size addresses mainly the books of Stephen King. And I think Stephen King, it's acknowledged he's not great at writing sex scenes. He shied away from it a lot. In fact, a lot of writers get quite tongue-tied or very clumsy when it comes to writing those scenes. And in Cicadas, there's such heat coming off the pages that when Hector and Belinda get together for the first time and the queen is there as well, it's incredibly erotic, and really, really sexual, and
Mhm.
just cut steams off the page. So
Mhm.
much bad eroticism out there. you know for you, did it make you just go, hang on, there is a gap here, there is that I could do really well, and that needs addressing, and that readers want to have?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So like if on Amazon I have a small little 3 short story collection called Sed de Sangre.
Okay.
It's 99 cents, 3
Yeah.
short stories. You can read it in half an hour.
Great.
And it is graphic
Oh.
horror. The last story, Snake Hips, is incredibly graphic.
Yeah.
And it's everyone's favorite. And so I started writing. I'm only like 25,000 words in, but I started writing. Oh, and The Kukui of Cancun, which
Mhm.
is another short story of mine that a lot of people like. So I started writing a novel, or
Mm.
maybe it'll be a novella. I don't know yet,
Yeah.
based on people's favorite characters in my short stories.
Mm.
But Sed de
Wicked.
Sangre, 3 short stories, very hot. And I wrote it. It's only 3 and small because I wanted to kind of test the waters.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of like give people a taste, and a lot of
Mm.
people love it.
Yeah.
And then in Maria the Wanted, there's a lot of heat, and Goddess of Filth, a lot of heat. Everything, I've got sexuality because it's such a
Yeah.
normal thing. Like, why would you? And as a woman, I feel there's, so many stories told, again, going
Mm.
back to reclaiming yourself. There's a lot of stories told about our bodies, about how our bodies respond, about our sexuality,
Mm.
about violence against us. Um, and for me, I just was like, you know what? Let me tell you how it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me just kind of, and maybe it's not like that for all women, but for me, and I enjoy writing about it. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to kind of, yeah, just again, I write what I want to write and how I
Yeah.
want to write it. So I did that. Um, and I always incorporate it because again, it's something that is very normal.
Yeah, well, again, it's just needed to, you know, kind of that moment of, because in Cicadas there's such a build up, and you know um when Belinda first meets Hector, without again giving anything away, I thought it was going to go in one direction at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning,
Yeah.
and then it you know, that relationship becomes something very, very different.
Yeah.
So, you know, but you know, you got this central character that there's this kind of ache, this loneliness as well, and this physical kind of longing. And actually it's just, you know, it's quite a way on into the novel until we meet you know, that a new character that then, you know,
Yeah.
that heat is fulfilled, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
lovely sense of just the pacing of that erotic heat is just
Mm-hmm.
beautifully done. um
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, if you guys want just like get said the sangre.
Yeah, right. So I know what I'm reading next. Straight up.
uh,
That's my, yeah. Billy Summers, the new Stephen King. I'm afraid that can wait for a little moment. Okay.
well, said the sangre, you literally you can read in like half an hour. It's so
Yeah,
short. It was
yeah,
just a teaser.
yeah,
So
yeah. Perfect. Okay, good. So that's on. I think many people will be downloading and reading that next. But it's interesting, alongside that, you know, amazing kind of you know, sexiness of the book, there's also that, we've spoken about the rage. I also got this sense of this absence or impotence of God. You know, there's a line about him, what a useless deity he was if he stood idly by. And you know, again, I'm just interested, you know, how much does faith or a lack of faith, you know, inform your writing?
yeah, well, I consider myself a spiritual person and
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
lot of spiritual moments, especially during the pandemic.
yeah.
And I try to incorporate it in my everyday life. You know, I have a tattoo here on my arm. I don't know if you can see, and
This is
says,
saying,
where's that thing? Oh, it says
yeah,
gratitude.
yeah, yeah. Oh, wicked,
So,
Jessica.
so
Yeah,
that's part of it. You know, that is
beautiful.
definitely part of my spirituality. But I think like a lot of horrible things in history have happened because of so-called faith. You know,
Yes.
it's not really faith. Um,
Yeah,
and so,
yeah.
and also with my ancestors' history,
Mm,
it was used as a way to
yeah,
oppress them. So, um, yeah, it's kind of teasing apart all of these different aspects of my
yeah,
identity and the identity of a lot of Mexican Americans,
yeah, yeah,
you know, and those that are come from that history.
yeah,
And also just, you know, not even just Mexican Americans, but people now the mestizos, you know, that are a mix of the
mm,
indigenous and the Spanish and the Portuguese,
mm,
and you know, you go to the islands like Cuba and Dominican and Puerto Rico, and they're all a mix of a
yeah,
lot of different things because of of what happened so long ago.
yeah.
So and on the back of faith.
Yeah, or you know, or that's the thing, is there's such a difference between like religion and faith. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have religion. You know, I don't have that construct, because for me, it doesn't make any sense, and it's been used as too much as a weapon of oppression.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm spiritual and have faith, because faith
Yeah.
for me is a very, very different thing. It's
Very different. And so,
um,
you know, in the book it's kind of like having faith, same with Goddess of Filth,
yeah,
having faith in something bigger than yourself, but
yeah,
ultimate
right.
leads to finding yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. So that tattoo, Violet, you've got gratitude. I mean,
Yeah.
at the moment, yeah, I really get this sense of, you know, just, you know, that it seems like it's your time. You know, there's such an excitement around what's happening. You know, you're so prolific at the moment. There's a
Yeah.
real
I'm excited.
response. Yeah, that must feel like almost that ink is really, really deepening and darkening, and really, yeah, at the
Yeah.
moment, it's
Absolutely. It
yeah,
was I got it in May and I was with my sister in May after
yeah.
not seeing her for like 2 years. So it
Wow.
felt amazing to get it with her next to me. As she
Yeah.
looked me horrified, like that looks like it hurts.
Well, they're very addictive. As
I
I've got a
know.
fair few, so I think you're still at some nice space on the arm or the other arm. So yeah.
It hurt.
Yeah, that's a tender area there, right? I've always chickened out and gone for up here. I've done this bit, but yeah, I've got an area here that I'm thinking of doing. So
Mm.
before I have that done, I might come and get some advice from you about. But yeah. So are you good for time? By the way,
Yeah.
yeah, you good for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Um, so yeah, there's a scene in Cicadas where Hector is reading The Shining, and there's the bathtub scenes and what's there behind the curtain. And
Hmm.
so, what's your take on Stephen King, and has he, if at all, influenced your work?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Stephen King. I mean, I grew up watching the films.
Yeah,
I mean, that was my first, the films before the books,
yeah,
obviously. My mom's not going to pass me like, hey, you want to read Cujo?
yeah, yeah,
I didn't I didn't read any King until I was much older.
yeah,
But I saw the films, which I don't know are kind of worse in a way because it's so visual when I was way too young. Obviously I'm 79, so
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was watching all the horror film, and I guess parenting back in the day, it was kind of
yeah,
like, the video stores, you see the videos and you're like, oh, I gotta
yeah,
watch that.
yeah, yeah.
Late night cable. Um, and so I watched all the films and I was a huge King fan. And I still think, I love those classics. I mean, Salem's Lot, the series, that film is just like, ugh, it still scares the shit out of me.
Yeah,
I mean, come on,
yeah.
Barlow and the kid, holy shit, you just cannot recreate
Yeah,
that terror from the 70s. Like, I just think but as much as I love him, I also think there've just been, okay, we've we've done enough
yeah,
remakes. Like, you
yeah,
can't can
yeah,
we just kind of get something fresh? I
yeah,
love it. And we've seen so many remakes. It's like, okay.
yeah. And I guess that,
Um
yeah, that must be incredibly frustrating. As a, as a writer, as an author, with a story to tell, voice to tell, and like you say, so much of what we see now is rehashes, remakes, sequels, prequels, just, and it's like, so where's the space for those new voices?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, if he's coming out with new stuff, great. Going to
Yeah,
new different genres, great.
yeah,
But we don't need to be dedicating to so much time and energy into something that's been done like 20 times, 10
yeah,
times, three
yeah,
times.
yeah,
I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like Pet
yeah,
Cemetery, we know the story. Like, you
yeah,
probably at this point don't even need to have seen it to know it.
yeah, yeah,
Same with The Shining. Like, you just
yeah.
but yeah, I'll always be like, oh, he's a fan. And
Mm.
but again, I think it's kind of like, well, let's get some new material out.
Yeah. And is there any new material out at the moment of other writers that's particularly, inspiring you or challenging you at the moment?
Well, I think I mean, Stephen Graham Jones is,
Mhm.
he's just really storming. I think it's
Yeah.
great. um God, there's so, I hate these
I know,
because
I
it's
know.
like, when you're
Basically
like,
on the real.
I've
It's like,
never
yeah,
read it. What's a horror
yeah, yeah,
book?
yeah.
What, who are
What's
horror authors?
what's your top three horror books? What are your top three? It's like you suddenly get.
Uh, uh,
Yeah, it's like that.
The
The brain
Stand,
just, yeah.
it's The Shining.
It. I heard. Did he write something called It? Or...
No. So obviously,
Yeah.
like, Stephen Graham Jones, I think, has done amazing things. There's Haley Piper,
Yeah.
an amazing trans horror writer. Um, there are so many women. Sina Paleo, she's an
Right.
amazing poet,
Yeah.
doing great things. Gabino Iglesias. Uh, God, there's so many
And
people. Like,
so many
just,
people that I'm gonna on the back of this check out
oh,
and
if you love slashers, Sergio Gomez has a really good one.
yeah,
Camp Slaughter. I
Awesome.
edited a short story collection called Latinx Screams, which are all
Mm,
uh, various short stories by Latinx writers. God, there's just so much. It's so hard. My brain is like the
yeah.
indie scene. I mean, horror is exploding.
Yeah,
Really, there's some really good stuff.
yeah, it
But
really
again,
is.
we do have to thank Papa King. Like,
Yeah.
he really was like, made it really popular. You can't deny
Yeah.
his influence or his place.
Yeah. But
All things have
interestingly,
their places.
they do, and it's interesting how still so many people, want to go, but he's just a horror writer, and we put him in this box, and you think, okay,
No, he's
so
written so much more.
yeah, exactly. It's that thing, isn't it? Of people
But it's
do like to box it up and put a little bow on it and go, well, you're here, you sit there, you sit there, and it's like,
but
well,
I think that's the advantage that the younger generations like me have, and that he, I mean, obviously he doesn't need to count his pennies or do nothing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
but
he's doing all right.
he's
Yeah,
doing all right. He can write whatever
yeah,
he wants, right? But
yeah,
we aren't pinned in the same boxes as he
yeah,
is because
yeah,
we have that opportunity to expand and to say no and
yeah,
recreate what it means to be a writer, a horror writer, or a writer of
yeah.
dark fiction.
Which
Because that's why
is,
I say dark fiction, because I want to write it all and I
I
like to
love
write it
that.
all.
I love that, and that darkness. I mean, again, we're diamonds, aren't we? We show different sides at different times, but
Mm-hmm.
I there's that light and that shade within us, within all of us, and I've heard you talk before of that, that darkness, and I, I guess sometimes the devil has the best tunes, right? To be able to explore that dark fiction is such a rich, fertile area to be able to plow, I guess.
No, absolutely, because it's there for all of us,
Yeah,
and it's the kind of things that we should explore and we must explore to get to know ourselves better and to understand other
yeah,
people.
yeah. Violet, can I ask? I mean, you gave some great insight into your creative process and your resilience as well, and lots of encouragement to all our budding writers and authors out there to keep that resilience, keep going. I just wondered if there's any particular advice that you would give to those who feel they might have a book within them but are maybe fearful, and especially those that are also then having to, you know, juggle maybe motherhood as well, and from minority backgrounds, those extra what words of experience and encouragement would you be able to share with them?
I would just say if it is a fire in your soul, in your belly, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to pursue it
Mm,
because, you don't want to be thinking, what if, you know,
yeah,
even if you just chip at it a little a bit at a time when you can, um, you owe it to yourself to pursue those things that are dear to your heart and to give you nourishment and fulfillment.
yeah,
um, because fear of what has not even occurred, fear of rejection before you're even rejected, is an illusion. It doesn't exist. So just go for it. Just do what you can do, work at it a little bit at a time, follow it, and see what happens. You might surprise yourself. And that's, a scary part of life, but it's also a beautiful part of life and something I'm trying to embrace more of. It's not always easy, but it's taken me some really cool places.
beautiful. Oh man, that's that's so cool to hear. It seems to me that you are really in the most powerful, empowering way, sticking two fingers to Tanya, in Cicadas, who
Mm-hmm.
who has that line about when she's talking about Milagros, and we tell their stories for them. It's the way
Mm-hmm.
it has to be. Now, I that line seared itself on the page for me. We tell the stories for them. It's the way it has to be. And I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking, thank God that there's a voice like yours out there that's going, no, I'll tell the stories because
Yeah.
this is me, and this is it.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah. And I always touch on that in a lot of the things I write. So Undocumented, the science fiction novel, it's about making your mark, feeling powerless when you see, which was crazy. It wasn't even happening when I wrote it. When you're stranded on Earth and you're seeing people, it's more about class than race, but you see all
Yeah.
these people streaming to the stars as you're stuck on Earth to just sit in it. And then it's like, oh my God, we've just had 2 billionaires go to space. And I'm like,
Oh,
did I just write that? please don't let Earth go to where it goes to in my novel. Don't. We've got to get this book out there so it doesn't happen.
yeah.
So the book touches on that, where people
Wow.
are stuck on Earth, and you've got all the resources going up, it's just
Oh,
chaos.
this sounds so cool. And when could we, when might we be able to see this as a science fiction story?
I don't know. I'm waiting for the publishers to call me back.
Okay, right.
It's with
Listen.
my agent.
So
It's with my
call her
agent.
back, all right? What are you doing? Because out there right now,
It's
there's a
with
load
my
of people,
agent.
wanting to. And I'm sure Jeff Bezos and Musk are going, hey, we need to get this story out there because we need to know what happens before. I mean,
they ain't gonna like it.
Yeah, they're gonna like. Well, listen, yeah, I mean, isn't it crazy, Violet? The two richest men on the planet spending their billions doing that, where they could wipe out global poverty. But yeah,
I wrote it. I wrote about it.
you just. I'm like, sorry, am I meant to just be applauding what they're doing here? Because
yeah, I wrote about it. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, there'll be some good news.
Yeah.
Who knows?
When
we'll see what happens.
We heard it here first. Okay. So listen, Violet, you have been so beautiful, gracious with your time,
God,
because
thank you.
You've just flown back, I know, from the States, where you've been at the Scares That Cares
that was
event.
great.
And so you've come back and you've done the interview with me. I know you're jet lagged and tired. You've been amazing at the time. Tell us just a little bit about Scares That Cares, because that just sounds awesome.
It was an amazing time. It is a charity event that happens every year. And, Brian Keene is like on his feet 24/7, just making it happen. And all the money goes to burn victims and people affected by cancer. So it's a great charity, great cause. And it's not just books and writers. You also have cosplayers, and you have people selling chili chocolate skulls, and you have people selling crystals, and you've got just all sorts. It's really great. T-shirts. It's a really amazing event. It's huge. And then you've got readings, you have panels, and just hanging out with people in the horror community. It's like the horror community. It's great. So it's amazing. There's 2 of them a year. Only this one went ahead because of the pandemic. So it was in Williamsburg, Virginia. It'll be there again next year. And then October, there's something called Merrimack Valley Book Festival. It's one day, October 9th, and that'll be in Massachusetts.
Amazing. And the lucky people that got to hear you read from Cicadas there, and
it was fun.
Yeah, I bet. Well, listen, from us at Kingsize and from all of the our listeners and the audience, it's just been an absolute delight, and so
thank you.
So important to talk to you, and just for everybody out there, Queen of Cicadas and Goddess of Filth, you name it. Okay, the short stories, especially, just give us
sangre.
That's the one.
Sed de sangre.
Sed de sangre.
Yeah, it's called. It's you can't miss it. It's a big skull, red with like a snake on top. So
right. Well, that's where I'm going next.
I'll show everyone really
Yeah,
quick.
do.
It's an amazing um, cover done by Eddie Generous. Oh, and Hairspray and Switchblades, which is about
Wicked.
a shapeshifter who's also a dancer.
Um,
Yeah. So here is
we've
Sed de
got
Sangre.
beautiful Sed de Sangre. That's such, man, that's a
Yes. And
very cool
then,
cover.
yeah,
Beautiful.
isn't it cool?
Yeah,
And then
love it.
Hairspray and Switchblade.
Yep.
Hairspray and Switchblades, I wrote basically, everybody writes about werewolves. I wrote about shapeshifter jaguars.
You know what? Werewolves are so yesterday. Shapeshifter jaguars. Now that's where the pulse is, right?
Yes, Hairspray and Switchblades.
Amazing. And for people where people wanted to get a copy of that, how can they access that?
Both of those are Amazon.
Great. Okay, so
Yeah.
Amazon, and of course tomorrow I'm gonna march into Waterstones, and if they don't have Queen, if they don't
I'm
have
going
the
into
stuff there,
Waterstones tomorrow as well, looking.
okay, right, okay, brilliant. I think you might have more influence and impact on them than I might do. But yeah, the absolute yeah, wonderful, powerful stories, and thank you for sharing them with us, and thank you for sharing your
Thank
time with
you.
us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.